Today I want to talk about this universal obsession with art supplies and buying all kinds of paints and pencils, full sets with, I don't know, 120 different colors. You see that, on social media. I see it a lot on YouTube, and it seems to be something people strive for to collect full sets of the best stuff out there. Art material flexing seems to be a thing now, and I want to say, unfortunately so. I chose this topic for today's video because here you can see me try out PanPastels on Pastelmat paper for the first time. I bought them recently and these are pretty pricey. And the last thing I want to do is show off pricey supplies and not say anything about why I bought them. I'll talk about these specifically later on in this video, but first I want to talk about this topic in more general terms. So in general, I am all about spending little money and little time for a good outcome. Oftentimes I opt for buying high-end supplies, but I never buy the full set of anything. I do believe in good quality supplies, but you can do so much with just small sets of pencils or paints. In fact, when you're still learning, there is nothing better than having to mix colors from your primaries. For example, with good color pencils, you can layer them to achieve the colors you need. And also it's often more interesting to see slight color variations in a realistic piece rather than a perfect color all over, for example, in skin tones. Getting the values right is so much more important than getting the hue 100% correct. And there are professional artists who play with these color variations and their paintings are so lively because of it. For me, there's no question of whether I want a full set of bad stuff that I can get for little money compared to a small set of good quality stuff. I'd always choose the latter. If you've been on this channel before, you probably have seen me use the dry brush technique with oil paint on paper. And that is a fast and overall cheap portrait painting method, which is one of the reasons I love it so much. One tube of paint will last you for ages. So I'll continue promoting this technique to monochrome portrait artists on a budget because I think it's genius. That being said, I see myself as a mixed media artist and I love trying out new supplies. So I don't want to discourage anyone to do that. And I'm not trying to say that my way is the right way, not at all. But what I want to suggest is to do your research before purchasing something new. I love watching YouTube videos about supplies I've never used before. And when I see others use them, I can get a really good feel for whether I'd enjoy them or not. Then if I decide I like a medium, I try to look for a relatively small set that still gives me the freedom to mix the colors I usually need. As I said, a set of primaries is a pretty good start. Later, if I find I really like the art material and there's a color I mix a lot, I can buy that to complement my range. Pre-mixed colors are great for larger areas where you need to have no variation in color. And of course, for a professional artist, it's a way to save time. I think that's also where this obsession comes from. We tend to follow professional artists and look up to them, and for their business, it can be important to have larger collections of high-end materials. So as beginners and intermediates, we feel that that's where we need to focus to get to that level. This may be an unconscious idea we pick up, but that surely will influence our decision making. Let's be clear, we do not need the best of the best in a full set to make good art. When you're starting out, there's no real need for you to worry about such things as light fastness. In fact, I know of professional artists who don't care about this, so why should we, who are not yet selling our art? The reason why I prefer decent or even professional grade supplies is that it influences how you draw and paint with them. If you want to improve your color pencil method, for example, but work with a very waxy, low pigmented pencil that doesn't allow layering, the stuff you maybe used in elementary school, you will become pretty frustrated pretty quickly because you simply cannot do with these what high student grade or professional pencils let you do. Same goes for paper. Cheap paper can be a pain to work with. So you want to be conscious of where and how you save money and spend money. I have a small set of student grade watercolor, but it's really good. And the difference to the professional grade is that some colors don't use the pure pigment, but rather a mixture of pigments. And I think they're not as highly pigmented and light fast. But these are aspects I really don't need to be concerned with when learning to master the medium. On the other hand, I use really good paper because in watercolor it makes a huge difference to your experience. So I'm not saying that you need professional quality for everything. A cheaper option may be all you need. And that's another point. What exactly is your goal and your motivation? For me, it's to enjoy the process and enjoy the outcome as I generate it, but I don't need the colors to be vibrant 50 years from now, and I don't care if certain colors aren't as true to the reference as they could be. So you really need to ask yourself what it is that you care about and make your decisions from there. There's of course also the case where I want to try something of which I am not really sure if I will like it or not, or maybe I need a material for just one project I thought of. And in that case, I don't buy a set at all, but opt for one or two colors to have something to try stuff out with. Oftentimes I mix media anyway, so for me this is a pretty good way to go about it. I heard so much about Copic markers, especially on YouTube, and I don't really need markers for the art I make, but there was a project where I thought it could come in handy to have one, so I bought one of them, and yeah, it's not something I really want to work with regularly, and yeah, I pretty much knew that before. I really hope that so far I haven't rubbed you the wrong way, because I know that, for example, art subscription boxes are a thing, and with those you don't really have control over what gets sent to you. Just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, these are subscription services where a company sends you a selection of art materials and also gives you some challenge to make art with the materials. So you don't choose what gets sent to you, that's up to the company that puts these boxes together. Honestly, I don't get the appeal of these boxes because for me, going to the art supply store to pick out materials I really want to try is one of the most fun things for me to do. So I'd never want to pay good money to a company to take away that joy from me. But we're all different, and I understand that some people are stuck with their chosen medium. So for them, taking a break from what they always do to explore new materials they had never thought of using before sounds like a really good thing. And by the way, I completely understand YouTubers who review these boxes regularly. It makes for good content and is actually a nice service to those of us unsure of whether we want to subscribe to a box or not. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so let me talk a bit about the PanPastels and Pastelmat now. When I was a little girl, we used to go to a nearby lake in the summer months to go swimming and hang out at the beach. They also had a camping site there, and at one of those, there used to be a man sitting and painting portraits with soft pastels regularly. I saw him several years in a row, and at the time I didn't know what the material was that he used, but I was completely fascinated with his ability to achieve lifelike portraits. They looked like perfect photographs. I'm pretty sure that seeing him work on these portraits was one of the main reasons I got fascinated with realistic drawing and painting in the first place. This was before being connected to the internet was a permanent thing. So these instances of ignition for a passion, I want to say, were rare. Seeing artists in action wasn't something you'd see a lot or ever. I want to stress this because it's completely different to the access to art and artists we have today. Anyway, it's years later and I still find pastels fascinating, but aside from some super cheap pastels I picked up in a supermarket many years ago to essentially use as chalk for a chalkboard, I never really tried them out. I don't like the messiness of powder and thought they might be scratchy to use on paper like chalk can be, so I never really considered them. When I learned about PanPastel, I thought that they might be a great alternative because you don't even touch them with your fingers, at least not necessarily. At the same time, they allowed blending almost like liquid paints, and you can mix them on the paper you paint on. You can combine them with pastel pencils or color pencils that let you easily and quickly create underlayers and also blurry bokeh backgrounds. The possibilities are really diverse. Pastelmat as a surface to work on With pastels was recommended by some YouTubers whose videos I watched as research, and they emphasized how important a sanded texture is to be able to layer. So I had a good feeling about it. If you don't layer much, you don't really need it, but I thought I would probably want to, so that's why I bought the Pastelmat. Both PanPastels and Pastelmat are pretty expensive. It is said that the PanPastels last a really long time because they are highly pigmented, and you don't lose a lot of those pigments because they're not that dusty. But of course, it is still an investment to make when you decide to buy them. Due to my research, I had a pretty good feeling about liking them, and I already had ideas on how to combine them with other mediums, so I eventually decided to buy them, and I had them on my wish list for 2 years or so. It was not a rash decision whatsoever. I bought the set of 10, which I believe will bring me far. They really do blend beautifully, and the Pastelmat really allows layering, which is also essential to get a smooth finish if that's what you're going for. I want to say I got a pretty good idea on how to use them while I was working on this first portrait. I intentionally didn't go for super realistic colors, but more of an illustration style with a vintage advertising kind of feel, or maybe that of American pinups or so. I think pastels are great for that. I really, really hope I didn't come across as judgmental, because I think we all have different motivations, and if you have your heart set on having the complete range of colors of your favorite medium, go for it, for sure. I would never want to discourage you of doing that. I guess the thing I am concerned about is modeling to young artists that having professional grade supplies and huge sets is something they need to aspire to. I don't see anyone doing that on purpose, honestly. In fact, lots of artist role models that I see on the internet show how you can make beautiful things on a budget, and that's a message I hope gets taken away way more often than the other end of the spectrum about, spending a lot of money. I'd love to read your thoughts on art supplies. Like, how do you choose what to buy? How do you go about it? What's important to you? So if you have anything to share, I'd love to read from you. And with that being said, stay creative.